This program is brought to you by First Premier Bank and First Premier Bank Card, supporting creativity in our community. The Sioux Empire Community Theater presents Alice in Wonderland. One thing was certain, that the white kitten had nothing to do with it. It was the black kitten's fault entirely. For the white kitten had been having its face washed by Dinah for the last quarter of an hour, and bearing it pretty well considering. So you see, it couldn't have had any hand in the mischief.
Oh, you wicked little thing. Really, Dinah ought to have taught you better manners. You ought, Dinah, you know you ought,
cried Alice, catching up the kitten and giving it a little kiss to make it understand that it was in disgrace. Alice snuggled her troop of cats by the window-sill, occasionally looking out at the cold expanse of winter.
Do you hear the snow against the window panes, Kitty? How nice and soft it sounds. Just as if someone was kissing the window all over outside. I wonder if the snow loves the trees and fields that it kisses them so gently. And then it covers them up snug, you know, with a white quilt. And perhaps it says, "Go to sleep, darlings, till the summer comes again." And when they all wake up in the summer, Kitty, they dress themselves all in green and dance about whenever the wind blows.
Alice rose from her seat and created a little melody in her head that went something like this. And then she started spinning around the room like a ballerina. Of course, she skipped her lessons for nearly half a year, so she tripped, fell, and bonked her head. After a nice unplanned nap, Alice awoke, looking at herself. Oh, it's a mirror, behind the curtains. How'd that get there?
Oh, a looking glass. Oh, Kitty, where did this come from? Let's pretend there's a way of getting through it somehow, Kitty. Let's pretend the glass has got as soft as snow so that we can get through.
She managed to squeeze through, step forward, and then, well, fall. Down, down, down she went. Either this hole was very deep, or she fell very slowly, for she had plenty of time as she went down to look about her and to wonder what was going to happen next. She looked at the sides of the hole and noticed that they were filled with cupboards and bookshelves. Here and there she saw maps and pictures hung among pegs. She took down a jar from one of the shelves as she passed. It was labeled Orange Marmalade, but to her great disappointment, it was empty. She felt that she was dozing off and had just begun to dream that she was walking hand in hand with Dinah, when suddenly down she came upon a heap of sticks and dry leaves, and the fall was over. Suddenly, a white rabbit with pink eyes ran close by her. There was nothing so very remarkable in that, nor did Alice think it so very much out of the way to hear the rabbit say to itself,
oh dear, I shall be too late, far too late. Hurry, I cannot be late."
When she thought about it afterwards, it occurred to her that she ought to have wondered at this, but at the time it seemed quite natural. But when the rabbit actually took a watch out of its waistcoat pocket and looked at it, and then hurried on, Alice started to her feet, for it flashed across her mind that she had never seen a rabbit with either a waistcoat pocket or a watch to take out of it. Away went Alice like the wind, and was just in time to hear it say, as it turned a corner,
Hurry, I cannot be late."
She was close behind it when she turned the corner, but the rabbit was no longer to be seen. She found herself in a long, low hall, of strange doors. There were doors all round the hall, but they were all locked. And when Alice had been all the way down one side and up the other, trying every door, she walked sadly down the middle, wondering how she was ever going to get out again. Suddenly she came upon a three-legged table. There was nothing on it but a tiny golden key. And then just beyond that, a little door about 15 inches high. She tried the little golden key in the lock, and to her great delight it fitted. Alice opened the door and saw the loveliest garden you ever saw.
Oh, what a lovely, lovely garden! How I should like to get out there among the bright flowers and cool fountains.
She tries to go through the door, getting her head through, but certainly not her shoulders.
Well, even if my head would go through, it would be of very little use without my shoulders.
There seemed to be no use in waiting by the little door, so she went back to the table, half hoping she might find another key on it, or, at any rate, a book of rules for shutting up people like telescopes.
Oh, how I wish I could shut up like a telescope. I think I could if I only knew how to begin.
This time she found a little bottle on it, with the words, "Drink me."
Surely this was not here before. Well, it's all very well to say drink me. I'll look first and see whether it's marked poison or not. For if a little girl drinks from a bottle marked poison, it is almost certain to disagree with her sooner or later. No, it must be all right. It tastes like a mixed flavor of cherry tart, custard, pineapple, roast turkey, toffee, and hot buttered toast. What a curious feeling.
And so it was. She was only 10 inches high, and her face brightened at the thought that she would now be the right size for going through the little door into the lovely garden.
I must be shutting up like a telescope. I am.
But then she realized
The key.
she had left the key on the table. Reluctantly so, she began to cry.
Come, there's no use in crying like this. I advise you to leave off this minute.
She stopped crying and noticed for the first time a little cake lying under the table. She picked it up and read the words that were marked on it in currants.
Eat me? Well, I'll eat it, and if it makes me grow larger, I can reach the key. And if it makes me smaller, I can creep under the door. So either way, I'll get into the garden.
She ate a little and checked her head to see which way she was growing. Finding that she remained the same size, she set to work and finished the cake. She then had a huge growth spurt.
Curiouser and curiouser.
She picked up the little key and hurried off to the garden door, which was now so small that it was as much as she could do to look through it with one eye. She cried again as she returned to the table and put down the key.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself to go on crying in this way. Stop this moment, I tell you.
There was a pattering of little feet, and the White Rabbit returned, with a pair of white kid gloves in one hand and a large fan in the other. He ran around muttering to himself,
Oh, the Queen, the Queen! Oh, won't she be angry if I've kept her waiting?
If you please, sir.
The White Rabbit started violently, dropped his fan, and scurried off. Alice picked up the fan and, fanned herself with it as she talked.
Dear, dear, how strange everything is today. And yesterday things went on just as usual. Let me think. Was I the same when I got up this morning? I almost think I can remember feeling a little different. But if I'm not the same, the next question is, who in the world am I?
She did not notice the tabletop was getting higher than ever above her head. She then saw the table's new height for the first time.
Good heavens! I must be growing small again. There's not more than 3 inches left of me. It must be the fan.
She threw away the fan, and then the table stopped growing.
That was a narrow escape. Now for the garden.
She ran back to the door, but it was shut, and she had left the key on the top of the table as before.
The key. The key.
Alice tried to get at the key, but again the table was too tall, and she cried louder than ever.
Oh dear. Oh dear, things are worse than ever. I declare it's too bad, that it is.
Suddenly her foot slipped, and Alice found herself her chin in a pool of tears that she had wept when she was tall.
I wish I hadn't cried so much.
Just then she heard something splashing about in the pool a little way off, and she swam nearer to make out what it was. It was a mouse that had slipped in like herself.
Would it be of any use now to speak to this mouse? Everything is so out of the way here that I should think it very likely it can talk. Oh, Mouse, do you know the way out of this pool? I am very tired of swimming about here, oh Mouse. I'm sure that must be the best way to address a mouse.
The mouse looked at her rather inquisitively and seemed to blink one of its little eyes, but said nothing.
Perhaps it doesn't understand English. Maybe it's a French mouse. Où est ma chatte?
In case your French is a little rusty, she said, "Where is my cat?" And to be expected, the mouse gave a sudden leap out of the water and seemed to quiver all over with fright.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I quite forgot you didn't like cats.
Not like cats. Would you like cats if you were me?
Well, perhaps not. Don't be angry about it. And yet, I wish I could show you our cat, Dinah. She is such a dear thing, and she's such a capital one for catching mice.
The mouse made a commotion and swam away from her as hard as he could.
Oh, I beg your pardon. We won't talk about her any more if you'd rather not.
We, indeed. As if I would talk on such a subject. Our family always hated cats. Nasty, low, vulgar things.
Are you fond of dogs? There's such a nice little dog near our house I should like to show you. A little bright-eyed terrier. It kills all the rats and... Oh, dear. I'm afraid I've offended it again. Mouse dear, do come back and we won't talk about cats or dogs either.
Let us go to shore, and then I'll tell you my history, and you'll understand why it is I hate cats and dogs.
It was high time to go, for the pool was getting quite crowded with the birds and animals that had fallen into it. There was a duck and a dodo, a lory and an eaglet, and several other curious creatures. Alice led the way, and the whole party swam to shore.
Now sit down, all of you, and listen to me. I'll soon make you dry enough. Ahem, are you all ready? This will dry you as this is the driest thing I know. Silence, all around. William the Conqueror, whose cause was favoured by the Pope, was soon submitted to by the English who wanted leaders, and had been of late much accustomed to usurpation and conquest. Edwin and Morcar, the heirs of Mercia and Northumbria...
Ugh.
I beg your pardon. Did you speak?
Not I.
I thought you did. I proceed. Edwin and Morcar, the heirs of Mercia and Northumbria, declared for him, and even Stignan, the patriotic Archbishop of Canterbury, found it advisable...
Found what, Quack?
Found it, of course. You know what it means.
I know what it means well enough. The question is, what did the Archbishop find, Quack?
Found it advisable to go with Edgar Atheling to meet William and offer him the crown. William's conduct at first was moderate, but the insolence of his Normans... How are you getting on now, my dear?
As wet as ever. Your speech doesn't seem to dry me at all.
In that case, I move that the meeting adjourned for the immediate adoption of more energetic remedies.
Speak English. I don't know the meaning of half those long words, but what's more, I don't believe you do either.
What I was going to say was that the best thing to get us dry would be a caucus race.
What is a caucus race?
Why, the best way to explain it is to do it.
There was no 1, 2, 3 in a way, but they began running when they liked, and left off when they liked, so it was not easy to know when the race was over. However, when they had been running half an hour or so, and were quite dry again, the dodo suddenly called out,
The race is over.
But who has won?
Everybody has won, and all must have prizes.
But who is to give the prizes?
Why, she, of course.
Prizes.
Alice had no idea what to do, and in despair she put her hand in her pocket and pulled out a box of candy.
Prizes.
Here, candy.
But she must have a prize herself, you know.
Of course. What else do you have in your pocket?
Only a thimble.
Hand it over here.
Alice thought the whole thing was very absurd, but they all looked so grave that she did not dare to laugh.
We beg your acceptance of this elegant thimble.
She simply bowed and took the thimble, looking as solemn as she could.
You promised to tell me your history, you know, and why it is that you hate C's and D's.
Mine is a long and a sad tale.
It is a long tale, certainly. But why do you call it sad?
The mouse began reading directly from its tail, as it was a long, sad tale.
Fury said to a mouse that he met in the house, "Let us both go to law, I will prosecute you. Come, I'll take no denial, we must have the trial, for really this morning I've nothing to do." Said the mouse to the cure, "Such a trial, dear sir, with no jury or judge, would be wasting our breath." "I'll be judge, I'll be jury," said cunning old Fury. "I'll try the whole cause, and condemn you to death." "You are not attending!"
I beg your pardon. You had gone to the fifth bend, I think.
"I had not."
A knot? Oh, do let me help to undo it.
"You shall do nothing of the sort."
He tossed the end of his tail over his shoulder as if it were a cloak and stalked off.
What a pity it wouldn't stay.
I wish I had our Dinah here. I know I do. She'd soon fetch it back.
And who is Dinah, if I might venture to ask the question?
Dinah's our cat.
This caused a sensation. Some of the birds hurried off at once, but the Lory gathered itself up carefully.
I really must be getting home. The night air doesn't suit my throat.
I wish I hadn't mentioned Dinah. Nobody seems to like her here.
The Queen, the Queen! Oh, my dear paws! Oh, my fern whiskers! Where can I have dropped them?
Alice guessed in a moment he was looking for the fan and a pair of white kid gloves, and she very good-naturedly began hunting about for them, but they were nowhere to be seen. Very soon the rabbit noticed Alice.
Why, Marianne, what are you doing out here? Run home this minute and fetch me a pair of gloves and a fan. Quick now!
He took me for his housemaid. But I'd better take him his fan and gloves. That is, if I can find them.
As she said this, she came upon a neat little house, on the door of which was a bright brass plate with the name W. Rabbit engraved upon it. She went in without knocking and hurried upstairs, in great fear lest she would meet the real Marianne. She had found her way into a little room with a table in the middle, and on it a fan and 2 or 3 pairs of tiny white kid gloves. She took up the fan and a pair of gloves, and then she noticed a little bottle. She uncorked it and put it to her lips.
I do really hope this will make me grow large again. I'm quite tired of being such a tiny little thing.
Before she had drunk half the bottle, she found her head pressing against the ceiling and had to stoop to save her neck from being broken.
That's quite enough. I hope I shan't grow any more. As it is, I can't get out at the door. I do wish I hadn't drunk quite as much.
Alas, it was too late to wish that. She went on growing, and very soon she had to kneel down on the floor. As a last resource, she put one arm out the window and one foot up the chimney.
Now I can do no more, whatever happens. What will become of me?
Marianne! Marianne! Fetch me my gloves this moment.
Presently, the rabbit came up to the door and tried to open it, but as the door opened inwards and Alice's elbow had pressed hard against it, that attempt proved a failure.
Then I'll go round and get in at the window.
That you won't.
She suddenly spread out her hand and made a snatch in the air. She did not get a hold of anything, but she did hear a little shriek, a cry, and a crack. It was just as possible it had fallen into a cucumber frame or something like that.
Pat, where are you?
Sure, then I'm here, digging for apples, Your Honor.
Here, come and help me out with this. Now tell me, Pat, what's that in the window?
Sure, it's an arm, Your Honor.
Whoever saw one that size? Why, it fills the whole window.
Sure, it does, Your Honor, but it's an arm for all that.
Well, it's got no business there at any rate. Go and take it away.
Sure, I don't like it, Your Honor, at all.
Do as I tell you, you coward.
She spread out her hand again and made another snatch in the air. This time there were 2 little shrieks and more sounds of broken glass. She waited for some time without hearing anything more. At last came a rumbling of little cartwheels and the sound of a good many voices all talking together. She made out the words.
Retrieve the ladder!
Where's the other ladder?
Why, I hadn't to bring one. Bill's got the other.
Bill, Fetch it here, lad.
Here, put him up at this corner.
No, tie them together first.
They don't reach half high enough yet.
Oh, they'll do well enough. Don't be particular.
Here, Bill. Catch hold of this rope.
We're the roof bear.
Mind that loose slate.
Oh, it's coming down. It's blue.
Now, who did that?
It was Bill, I fancy.
Who's to go down the chimney?
Hey, I shan't. You do it.
That I won't, then.
Bill's to go down.
Here, Bill. The master says you're to go down the chimney.
Oh, so Bill's got to come down the chimney, has he? I wouldn't want to be in Bill's place. Sorry, Bill.
There goes Bill. Catch him.
Hold up his head.
Don't choke him.
How was it, old fellow? What happened to you? Tell us all about it.
Well, I hardly know. No more, thank ye. All I know is something comes at me like a chuck in the box, and up I goes like a rocket.
So you did, old fellow. We must burn the house down.
If you do, I'll set my cat at you. I wonder what they will do next. If they had any sense, they'd take the roof off.
All of a sudden, the White Rabbit threw a cake through the window. Based on her past experience with such cake, Alice goes ahead and eats it. She begins to shrink. Once she is a decent size, she runs out of the house and off into the wood.
Here's a path that leads straight to a garden ahead at least. No, well, it doesn't do that. But I suppose it will at last. But how curiously it twists. It's more like a corkscrew than a path. Well, this turn goes to the hill, I suppose. No, it doesn't. This goes straight back to the house. Well then, I'll try it the other way.
She came upon a bed of flowers.
Oh, Tiger Lily, I wish you could talk.
We can talk when there's anybody worth talking to.
And can all the flowers talk?
As well as you can, and a great deal louder.
It isn't manners for us to begin. You know, and I really was wondering when you'd speak. Said I to myself, her face has got some sense to it, though it's not a clever one. Still, you're the right colour, and that goes a long way.
I don't care about the colour. If only her petals curled up a little more, she'd be all right.
Aren't you sometimes frightened at being planted out here, with nobody to take care of you?
There's the tree in the middle. What else is it good for?
But what could it do if any danger came?
It says bow wow. That's why its branches are called boughs.
Didn't you know that?
Silence, every one of you. They know I can't get at them or they wouldn't dare to do it.
If you don't hold your tongues, I'll pick you.
That's right. The daisies are worst of all. When one speaks, they all begin together, and it's enough to make one wither to hear the way they go on.
I've been in many gardens before, but none of the flowers could talk.
Put your hand down and feel the ground. Then you'll know why.
It's very hard, but I don't see what that has to do with it.
In most gardens, they make the beds too soft so that the flowers are always asleep.
I never thought of that before.
It's my opinion that you never think at all.
I never saw anybody that looked stupider.
Hold your tongue! As if you ever saw anybody. You keep your head under the leaves and snore away there till you know no more what's going on in the world than if you were a bud.
Are there any more people in the garden besides me?
There's one other flower in the garden that can move about like you. I wonder how you do it. But he's larger than you are.
Is he like me?
Well, not exactly, but he has just as awkward of a shape as you, but he's greener.
Does he ever come out here?
I dare say you'll see him soon. He's one of the thorny kind.
I think I'll go and meet him.
Alice looked through the wood, wondering where she could find that beautiful garden. She came upon a large mushroom and peeped over the edge of it. Her eyes immediately met those of a large green caterpillar that was sitting on top, with its arms folded, quietly smoking a long hookah.
Who are you?
I hardly know, sir, just at present.
What do you mean by that? Explain yourself.
I can't explain myself, I'm afraid, sir, because I'm not myself, you see?
I don't see.
I'm afraid I can't put it any more clearly. For being so many different sizes in a day is very confusing.
It isn't.
Well, perhaps you haven't found it so yet, but when you have to turn into a butterfly, I should think you'll feel it a little strange, won't you?
Not a bit.
Well, perhaps your feelings may be different.
You. Who are you?
I think you ought to tell me who you are first.
Why? Come back. I have something important to say. Keep your temper.
Is that all?
No. So you think you're changed, do you?
I'm afraid I am, sir. I can't remember things as I used to, and I don't keep the same size for 10 minutes together.
What size do you want to be?
Oh, I'm not particular as to size. Only one doesn't like changing so often, you know.
I don't know. Are you content now?
Well, I should like to be a little larger, sir, if you wouldn't mind. 3 inches is such a wretched height to be.
It is a very good height indeed.
But I'm not used to it.
You'll get used to it in time. One side will make you grow taller, and the other side will make you grow shorter.
One side of what? The other side of what?
Of the mushroom.
In another moment, he was out of sight.
Now, which is which?
Alice walked round the mushroom, trying to make out which are the 2 sides of it, since it is round and doesn't have sides. Finally, she went counterclockwise, and she appeared to get larger as the mushroom got smaller. Once Alice became a more respectable size, she continued her journey through the wood. She was then startled to see a Cheshire Cat sitting on a bough of a tree a few yards off. The cat only grinned when it saw Alice.
Cheshire Puss, would you tell me, please, which way I ought to walk from here?
That depends a good deal on where you want to get to.
I don't much care where.
Then it doesn't matter which way you walk.
So long as I get somewhere not among mad people.
You can't help that. We're all mad here. I'm mad. You're mad.
How do you know that I'm mad?
You must be, or you wouldn't have come here. By the by.
It slowly vanished, with the grin remaining behind for a few seconds longer than the rest of the body. There was a table set out under a tree in front of a house, and the March Hare and the Hatter were having tea at it. A dormouse was sitting between them, fast asleep, and the other 2 were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it. The table was a large one, but the 3 were all crowded together at one corner of it.
No room, no room.
There's plenty of room.
She sat down in a large armchair at one end of the table.
Have some crumpets.
I don't see any crumpets.
There isn't any.
Then it wasn't very polite of you to offer it.
It wasn't very polite of you to sit down without being invited.
I didn't know it was your table. It's laid for a great many more than 3.
What day of the month is it?
He had taken his watch out of his pocket and was looking at it uneasily, shaking it every now and then and holding it to his ear.
The 4th?
2 days wrong. I told you butter wouldn't suit the works.
It was the best butter.
Yes, but some crumbs must have got in as well.
It was the best butter.
What a funny watch. It tells the days of the month and doesn't tell what o'clock it is.
Why should it? Does your watch tell what year it is?
Of course not. But that's because it stays the same year for such a long time together.
Which is just the case with mine.
I don't quite understand you.
The dormouse is asleep again.
He poured a little hot tea upon its nose. The dormouse shook its head impatiently and said, without opening its eyes,
Of course. Just what I was going to remark myself.
You know, we quarrelled last March, just before he went mad. It was at the great concert given by the Queen of Hearts, and I had to sing, "Twinkle, twinkle, little bat, how I wonder what you're at." You know the song, perhaps?
I've heard something like it.
It goes on, you know, in this way. Up above the world you fly, like a tea tray in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle.
Twinkle, 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 twinkle. Twinkle, 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 twinkle.
Well, I'd hardly finished the first verse.
Twinkle, 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 twinkle.
I'd hardly finished the first verse.
Twinkle, 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 twinkle. Twinkle, 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 twinkle.
I'd hardly finished the first verse when the Queen bawled out, "He's murdering the time! Off with his head!"
How dreadfully savage.
And ever since that, he won't do a thing I ask. It's always 6 o'clock now.
Is that the reason so many tea things are put out here?
Yes, that's it. It's always tea time, and we've no time to wash the things between whiles.
Then you keep moving around, I suppose.
Exactly so, as the things get used up.
But when you come to the beginning again?
Suppose we change the subject. I'm getting tired of this. I vote the young lady tell us a story.
I'm afraid I don't know one.
Then the Dormouse shall.
Wake up, Dormouse!
I wasn't asleep. I heard every word you feathers were saying.
Tell us a story.
Yes, please do.
And be quick about it, or you'll be asleep before it's done.
Once upon a time, there were 3 little sisters, and their names were Elise, Lacey, and Tilly, and they lived at the bottom of a well.
What did they live on?
Well, they lived on syrup.
They couldn't have done that, you know. They'd have been ill.
So they were very ill.
But why did they live at the bottom of a well?
Take some more tea.
I've had nothing yet, so I can't take more.
You mean you can't take less? It's very easy to take more than nothing.
Nobody asked your opinion.
Who's making personal remarks now?
Why did they live at the bottom of a well?
It was a syrup well.
There's no such thing.
Shh. If you can't be civil, you'd better finish the story yourself.
No, please go on. I won't interrupt again.
And so, these 3 little sisters, they were learning to draw, you know.
What did they draw?
Syrup.
I want a clean cup. Change places.
But I don't understand. Where did they draw the syrup from?
You can draw water out of a water well, so I should think you could draw syrup out of a syrup well, dummy?
But they were in the well.
Of course they were in the well. They were learning to draw, and they drew all manner of things. Everything that begins with an M.
Why with an M?
Why not?
The Dormouse had closed his eyes by this time and was going off into a doze, but on being pinched by the Hatter, it woke up again.
Eek! That begins with an M, such as mousetraps and the moon and memory and muchness. You know, you say things are much of a muchness. Did you ever see such a thing as a drawing of a muchness?
Really? Now you ask me. I don't think that...
Then you shouldn't talk.
This piece of rudeness was more than Alice could bear. She got up in great disgust and walked off. The last time she saw them, they were trying to put the Dormouse into the teapot.
I'll never go there again. It's the stupidest tea party I ever was at in all my life.
She walked down a little passage, and then she found herself at last in the beautiful garden, among the bright flower beds and the cool fountains. A large rose tree stood near the entrance of the garden. The roses growing on it were white, but there were 3 gardeners at it, busily painting them red.
Look out now, 5. Don't go splashing paint over me like that.
I couldn't help it. 7 jogged my elbow.
That's right, 5. Always lay the blame on others.
You'd better not talk. I heard the Queen say only yesterday you deserve to be beheaded.
What for?
That's none of your business.
Yes, it is his business, and I'll tell him. It was for bringing the cook tulip roots instead of onions.
Well, of all the unjust things.
His eye chanced to fall upon Alice as she stood watching them, and he checked himself suddenly. The others looked round also, and all of them bowed low.
Would you tell me, please, why you are painting those roses?
5 and 7 looked at 2.
Why, the fact is, you see, miss, this here ought to have been a red rose tree, and we put in a white one by mistake. And if the Queen was to find out, we'd all have our heads cut off, you know?
The Queen! The Queen!
The 3 gardeners ran and fell on their faces as Alice coughed and looked off eagerly to see the Queen. First, 4 clubs entered. They were soldiers and wore helmets and carried spears. They stopped and turned the face towards Alice. Then 10 hearts entered, 2 by 2. Then followed in solitary splendour the knave of hearts, bearing the king's crown on crimson cushion. He was polite and smiling and half-witted. And last of all in this grand procession came the king and queen of hearts. The white rabbit, a fraction late and very nervous, passes Alice without noticing her and finds his place behind the knave of hearts, unstoppable. Queen pointed at Alice and addressed the knave.
Who is this?
The knave only bowed and smiled in reply.
Idiot! What's your name, child?
My name is Alice, so please your majesty. Why, they're only a pack of cards after all. I needn't be afraid of them.
And who are these?
How should I know? It's no business of mine.
Off with her head, off!
Nonsense!
Consider, my dear, she is only a child.
Turn them over.
The knave turned the gardeners over with one foot.
Get up!
They do so and begin bowing excessively.
Leave off that, you make me giddy. What have you been doing here?
May it please your majesty, we were trying...
I see. Off with their heads!
The procession moved on, with 3 of the soldiers remaining behind to execute the unfortunate gardeners.
Can you play croquet?
Yes.
Come on, then.
It's a fine day.
Very.
Hush, hush.
Get to your places.
Here began the most curious croquet game that Alice had ever seen. The players all played at once, quarrelling and fighting, until finally the king left the game and started to dance with Alice. When the queen saw this, she was furious with passion and stamped out shouting,
Off with his head, off with her head, off with their heads!
The croquet ground cleared and Alice made her escape. Alice heard the king say in a low voice to the company generally that they were all pardoned. Well, what a relief. 2 rotund figures stood under a tree, each with an arm around the other's neck, and Alice knew which was which in a moment, because one of them said dumb embroidered on his collar, and the other said D. They stood so still that she quite forgot they were alive, and she was just going round to discover the word Tweedle was written on the back of each collar when she was startled by a voice coming from the one marked dumb.
If you think we're waxworks, you ought to pay, you know. Waxworks weren't made to be looked at for nothing, nohow.
Contrariwise, if you think we're alive, you ought to speak.
I'm sure I'm very sorry.
I know what you're thinking about, but it isn't so, nohow.
Contrariwise, if it was so, it might be, and if it were so, it would be. But as it isn't, it ain't. That's logic.
I was thinking, which is the best way out of this wood? It's getting so dark. Would you tell me, please? First boy.
Nohow.
Next boy.
Contrariwise.
You've been wrong. The first thing in a visit is to say, how'd you do, and shake hands.
Alice did not like shaking hands with either of them first for fear of hurting the other one's feelings, so, as the best way out of difficulty, she took both the hands at once. The next moment they were dancing round in a ring. This seemed quite natural, and she was not even surprised to hear music playing. It seemed to come from a tree under which they were dancing, and it was done by the branches rubbing one across the other like fiddles or fiddlesticks.
I hope you're not much tired.
Nohow, and thank you very much for asking.
So much obliged. Do you like poetry?
Yes, pretty well. Some poetry. Would you tell me which road leads out of the wood?
What shall I repeat to her?
The walrus and the carpenter is the longest.
If it's very long, would you please tell me first which road...
The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright, and this was odd because it was the middle of the night.
The sea was wet as wet could be, the sands were dry as dry. You could not see a cloud because no cloud was in the sky. No birds were flying overhead, there were no birds to fly.
The walrus and the carpenter were walking close at hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If this were only cleared away, they said, it would be grand.
O oysters, come and walk with us, the walrus did beseech. A pleasant walk, a pleasant talk along the briny beach. We cannot do with more than 4 to give a hand to each.
The walrus and the carpenter walked on a mile or so, and then they rested on a rock conveniently low. And oh, the little oysters stood and waited in a row.
The time has come, the walrus said, to talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax, of cabbages and kings, and why the sea is boiling hot, and whether pigs have wings.
A loaf of bread, the walrus said, is what we chiefly need.
Pepper and vinegar besides are very good indeed. Now, if you're ready, oysters dear, we can begin to feed.
It seems a shame, the walrus said, to play them such a trick, after we've brought them out so far and made them trot so quick. The carpenter said nothing, but the butter's spread too thick.
Oh, oysters, said the carpenter, you've had a pleasant run. Shall we be trotting home again? But answer came there none, and this was scarcely odd because they'd eaten every one.
I like the walrus best because, you see, he was a little sorry for the poor oysters.
He ate more than the carpenter, though. You see, he held his handkerchief in front so that the carpenter couldn't count how many he took, contrariwise.
That was mean. Then I like the carpenter best, if he didn't eat so many as the walrus.
But he ate as many as he could get.
Well, they were both very unpleasant characters. And now I really must be going somewhere.
The trial's beginning! The trial's beginning! The trial's beginning!
What trial is it?
Throne when they arrived, with a great crowd assembled about them, all sorts of little birds and beasts, as well as a whole pack of cards. The knave was standing before them, in chains, with a soldier on each side to guard him, and near the king was the white rabbit, with a trumpet in one hand, and a scroll of parchment in the other. In the very middle of the court was a table, with a large dish of tarts upon it. They looked so good that it made Alice quite hungry to look at them.
Silence in the court!
Oh, what lovely tarts! I wish they'd get the trial done and hand round the refreshments.
Young lady, just look around the road and tell me whom you see.
I see nobody on the road.
I only wish I had such eyes, to be able to see nobody, and at that distance, too. Why, it's as much as I can do to see real people in this light.
I see somebody now, but he comes very slowly. And what curious attitudes he goes into.
The March Hare approached the stand, skipping up and down, wiggling like an eel.
This young lady loves you with an H.
The hare ran to the foot of the throne.
You alarm me. I feel faint. Give me a ham sandwich.
The hare reached into his bag and pulled out a small sandwich which the king devoured greedily.
Another?
There's nothing left but hay now.
Hay, then?
The hare now gave him some hay.
There's nothing like eating hay when you're faint.
I should think throwing cold water over you would be better.
I didn't say there was nothing better. I said there was nothing like it. Who did you pass on the road?
Nobody.
Quite right. This young lady saw him too, so of course nobody walks slower than you. Now that you've got your breath, you may tell us what they're saying in the town.
I'll whisper it. The trial ought to begin.
Do you call that a whisper? If you do such a thing again, I'll have you butted. It went through and through my head like an earthquake. Sit down. Harold, read the accusation.
The Queen of Hearts, she made some tarts, all on a summer day. The Knave of Hearts, he stole those tarts and took them quite away.
Consider your verdict.
Not yet, not yet. There's a great deal more to come before that.
Call the first witness.
First witness!
The first witness was the Hatter. He came in with a teacup in one hand and a piece of bread and butter in the other.
I beg pardon, Majesty, for bringing these in, but I hadn't quite finished my tea when I was sent for.
Well, you ought to have finished. When did you begin?
14th of March, I think it was.
Write that down. Take off your hat.
Oh, it isn't mine.
Stolen.
Oh, I keep them to sell. I've none of my own. I'm a hatter.
Give your evidence, and don't be nervous, or I'll have you executed on the spot.
I'm a poor man, Your Majesty, and I hadn't but just begun my tea, not above a week or so ago, and what with the bread and butter getting so thin, and the twinkling of the tea.
The twinkling of what?
It began with the tea.
Of course twinkling begins with a T. Do you take me for a dunce? If that's all you know, you may stand down.
I can't go any lower. I'm on the floor as it is.
Then you may sit down.
I'd rather finish my tea.
You may go.
Just take his head off outside.
Consider your verdict.
There's more evidence to come yet, please, Your Majesty. This paper's just been picked up. It's a set of verses.
Are they in the prisoner's handwriting?
No, they're not, and that's the strangest thing about it.
He must have imitated someone else's hand.
Please, Your Majesty, I didn't write it, and they can't prove I did. There's no name signed at the end.
If you didn't sign it, That only makes matters worse. You must have meant some mischief, or you'd signed your name like any honest man.
That proves his guilt.
It proves nothing of the sort. Why, you don't even know what they're about.
Well, read them.
Where shall I begin, please, your majesty?
Begin at the beginning, and go on until you come to the end, and then stop.
They told me you had been to her and mentioned me to him. She gave me a good character, but said I could not swim. He sent them word I had not gone, we know it to be true. If she should push the matter on, what would become of you? I gave her 1, they gave him 2, you gave us 3 or more. They all returned for him to you, though they were mine before. I gave her 1, they gave him 2, you gave us 3 or more. They all returned from him to you, though they were mine before. If I or she should chance to be involved in this affair, he trusts to you to set them free exactly as we were. He trusts to you to set them free exactly as we were. My notion was that you had been, before she had this fit, an obstacle that came between him and ourselves in it. An obstacle that came between him and ourselves in it. Don't let him know she liked him best, for this must ever be a secret, kept from all the rest. Between yourself and me, a secret, kept from all the rest, between yourself and me.
Well, that's the most important piece of evidence we've heard yet. So now let the jury...
If any of them can explain it, I'll give him 6pence. I don't believe there's an atom of meaning in it.
She doesn't believe there's an atom of meaning in it.
If there's no meaning in it, that saves a world of trouble, you know, as we needn't try to find any. And yet, I don't know, I seem to see some meaning in them after all. I said I could not swim. You can't swim, can you?
Do I look like it?
All right, so far. We know it to be true. That's the jury, of course. I gave her 1, they gave him 2. Why, that must be what he did with the tarts, you know.
But it goes on. They all returned from him to you.
Why, there they are. Nothing can be clearer than that. Well, then again, before she had this fit. You never had fits, my dear, I think.
Never.
Then the words don't fit you. It's a pun!
It's a lie.
What do you know about this business?
Nothing.
Nothing whatever?
Nothing whatever.
Well, that's very important. Consider your verdict.
No. Sentence first, verdict afterwards.
Stuff and nonsense. The idea of having the sentence first.
Hold your tongue.
I won't.
Off with her head.
Who cares for you? You're nothing but a pack of cards.
Off with the head. Off with the head. Off with the head. Off with the head.
As the whole pack rose up into the air and came flying down upon her, she gave a little scream, half of fright and half of anger, and tried to beat them off, and found herself lying on the cushion of the windowsill where we first found Alice at the beginning of this story. Her head was on the lap of her sister, who was gently brushing her hair. "Wake up, Alice dear," said her sister. "Why, what a long sleep you had."
Oh, I've had such a curious dream,
said Alice, and she told her sister, as well as she could remember them, all these strange adventures of hers that you have just been listening about. And, when she had finished, her sister kissed her and said, "It was a curious dream, dear, certainly. But now run in to your tea. It's getting late." So Alice got up and ran off, thinking while she ran, as well as she might, what a wonderful dream it had been. Her sister sat still by the window, leaning her head on her hand, watching the snow fall in the distance, and thinking of little Alice and all her wonderful adventures, till she too began dreaming herself.
Alice was played by Cara Davidson, the White Rabbit, Courtney Hardie, the Mouse, Celeste Bryant, Lory, Connie Sivertson, Duck, Bryn Mongeau, Dodo, Brooklyn Kellenberger, Eaglet, Makenna Noel. Pat was played by Amy Gage. Animal 1 was played by Brooklyn Kellenberger. Animal 2, Malle Driscol. Animal 3, Amy Gage. Animal 4, Matt Sarda. Animal 5, Emily Ehlars. Bill was played by Jesse Jensen. Tiger Lilly, played by Julie Sauer. Rose, Celeste Bryant. Daisy 1, Molly Driscoll. Daisy 2, Makenna Portinga. Violet, Bryn Mongeau. Caterpillar, Isaac Smith. The Cheshire Cat, played by Lee Spencer. March Hare, played by Myriam Zamey. Mad Hatter, Amber Bosworth. Dormouse, Emma Ehlars. 2 of Spades, Matt Sarda. 5 of Spades, Isaac Smith. The 7 of Spades was played by Jordan Deffenbaugh. Queen of Hearts, Abby Berkey. The King of Hearts, Anthony M. Hunky. The Knave was played by Connie Silverston. Tweedledee, played by Molly Murphy McFarland. Tweedledum, Leigh Spencer. Vocal mixing was done by Jesse Jensen. Sound design by Jordan Deffenbaugh. Alice in Wonderland was adapted and directed by Jordan Deffenbaugh.
Hey there, it's Jordan Deffenbaugh. I just want to thank you for listening in tonight. It's really appreciated. There's a lot of work that goes into these, especially this one. This one was a monster. But thank you for sticking through it. Right now, if you could, just do me a favor. Go to SiouxFallsTheater.com, click donate, and see what you can muster right now in these difficult times, just to help us out a bit. Look at it like a ticket to a show. And you can just donate whatever dollar amount you like, or you could join the 120 Club, which is a yearly membership that basically supports the theater in our overall operation. So SiouxFallsTheater.com, click donate. You can choose whichever direction. Also, check out, there's a website called OurMayberry.com. If you go there, you can scroll down and you can look up latest campaigns, and you click that and you'll see the Sioux Empire Community Theater. Click on Become a Supporter, because that's going to help us down the road with this company, Our Mayberry, which is rolling out this brand new way to pay at local businesses and also support nonprofits that you love. So, OurMayberry.com, become a supporter. We would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.